Change these settings for sound. Okay. What helps to keep me sane, and that is just knowing that God is real. And I think that we've got to, we've got to really come another way. So I want you to call me at 773 763 WCPT. Let's talk about a ceasefire. Let's talk about peace, and let's talk about how we got here, what's going on here today. Let's begin with these headlines. The humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip is deepening, everybody. About 600,000 people have been displaced and at least 2,670 killed in Israeli strikes. Uh, Food, fuel, and water are running out as negotiations continue over the delivery of aid. Just know that the blocking of food and fuel and water is a war crime, and that is what is happening over there right now, and that should not be. That should not be. The death toll from Hamas's attacks rose to at least 1,400 people, and you have a death toll from Israeli strikes on Palestinians, 2,670. Too many people have died already. Israeli troops are preparing for a ground invasion and exchange fire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. So as you can see, this fight has opened up on another front. You've got Hezbollah, you've got Hamas, and you've got other elements of Palestinian freedom fighters engaging with the IDF. IDF is saying for their portion that things have not reached a critical point, but the question is, what will be the tipping point? President Biden said a new Israeli occupation of Gaza would, quote, be a big mistake. He also condemned the killing of a Palestinian American boy near Chicago in a hate crime, everybody. He was, in fact, a child here just outside of Chicago, the U.S. born Palestinian boy. He was stabbed. The 70-year-old landlord killed this child, stabbing him multiple times. A 6-year-old is it Wade Al-Fayumi. He died of his wounds. He had been stabbed by this 71-year-old man. Get this, everybody, 26 times. 26 times. A 6-year-old boy here in Chicago. A gag order hearing in Donald Trump's January 6th case will be held today. The judge overseeing former President Trump's federal election obstruction case in Washington, D.C., will hear arguments on whether she should restrict what Trump can say about the case. Prosecutors requested the gag. They worry that the former president's inflammatory comments could influence potential jurors or intimidate witnesses. Republicans nominated another candidate for House Speaker on Friday. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, a key ally in former President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He was chosen after Majority Leader Steve Scalise withdrew. Probably more chaos, everybody, and Republican infighting. He has to reach 217 votes, which he has yet to reach. He's rallying to try and get them. Will he get there? We do not know. The vote could be as soon as tomorrow. The drugstore chain, everybody, Rite Aid, filed for bankruptcy. Wow, can you believe that? Years of debt and a slew of lawsuits alleging the chain helped fuel the nation's opioid epidemic by unlawfully filling prescriptions for the painkillers, everybody. A sudden spike in global warmth last month is confusing scientists, and such sad news, two of the giants who have given us so much joy down through the years have made their transition. Last week, at the end of last week, Rudolph Isley, the big brother that we would see in the Isley Brothers, he made his transition. Oh my goodness, he was like the boss of the family, the one who kept everything together. God bless him and thank him, this old heart of mine. Well, it is for you, Rudolph Isley, today, sending you so much love. And Suzanne Summers, Chrissy from Three's Company. How many of us grew up with her? We love her. Well, she's been battling breast cancer, as you know, for many, many years. And as she played Chrissy Snow in the 1970s, she evolved into a renowned producer, actress, and health and fitness guru. Particularly as she became ill, she wanted all of us to be well. And her thigh master, everybody remember that? Well, she was fit as a fiddle, but she was 76 years of age, and she died the day before her 77th birthday, which would have been today. Happy birthday to you, Suzanne Summers, and thank you, and Rudolph Isley, and so many for all of the joy that you all have given us down through the years, sending them so much love. Hey, everybody, I have a quick word for you today. Everybody, please count it all joy. That's what the book of James tells us to do. Count it all joy. No matter what happens in life, count it all joy. Everything in your life, nothing is a mistake. Everything in your life is designed to help to make you better. It's designed to perfect your faith. It's designed to make you really more of who you're supposed to be. And so everything that happens in your life, I hope that you will count it all joy. I hope that you will know that it all matters and that it all is designed to make you who you're supposed to be. All joy. You can't cherry pick life. You have to take it all, everybody. It's the first book of James, the second verse. And it tells you to consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter trials of many kinds. And you know, life can be tough. Life can be tough. Life can be tough. It is tough. But what it does do is it perfects you. You find you become wiser. Diamonds are made under pressure. And if you really keep on living, you will find that you learned a lot in the toughest of times. So every little piece of you, count it all joy. Every experience, and particularly the tough times, count them all joy. Every little thing that you go through, make sure that it's something that you will grow through. Remember that. TJ, you should take your number off of the chat line. I don't want you to have it there. Oh, my word. So I want you to meet my morning stars over here, Carol Crowley and Morris Daniels and Carol Soskin and Barbara Bacon. Carol out there early, every day out there in the hills of Beverly, sending you so much love. Barbara Bacon sending you much love. And everybody, send some love to Paula Garcini. She is our sister. She is one of the original Morning Stars. She's had a little bit of illness. She's doing well. She's had a little bit of illness, and so I want you all to send her some love today. Send her some love. She needs that today. Had to be hospitalized, I understand. But and she is our sister, and we love her very much. Please send Paula Garcini so much love today. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 54 degrees. It will be cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 56 degrees, clear with periodic clouds. In the NFL, Minnesota and Chicago faced off yesterday, and the Vikings were victorious, 19-13. Oh, Major League Baseball. Who's going to be the champion? We don't know, but I tell you what, the Rangers are leading the Astros in their series, and they won yesterday, 2-0. And the Rangers will be playing the Astros tonight, along with the Diamondbacks and the Phillies. And in the WNBA, the Liberty lead in their championship series. 2-1. They won yesterday, 87-73. Let me know if we have Dr. Shanina Knighton up. Okay. Okay, Dr. Knighton, how you doing today? I am doing well. What's on your mind today? So what is it with sugar? I mean, is it refined sugar? Is it brown sugar, or is it all sugar? Okay, so is brown sugar, I mean, is there a better sugar? Is there a good sugar? Mm-hmm. Mm. So refined sugar is the problem. Okay. All right, that's good to know. This is what happens. We're not conscious. We're not conscious of what we're eating. We're not conscious of what we're ingesting. Thank you so much, Dr. Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina. Hey, Dr. Nina. You see what the sugar is all the time? And so when people are popping up with diabetes and all kinds of things, this is what happens. Oh my gosh. Hey, Dr. Nina, Heydrnina. Let's talk about a ceasefire. Some people in Congress are saying that that is something we need to be pushing for in the Middle East. And then others are saying, are you kidding? We need some revenge right now. At least that's my read on it. Call us at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Okay, Dr. Knighton, I cannot talk today. I do not have any sound. I'm trying to find out what the deal is. What is going on? Yeah, so I'm trying to find that out right now. This is a tangled mess that I have here on my. It's a tangled mess that I have here on my. I cannot wait to get this to completely change this because this is like it's a tangled mess, a mess. So okay.
Sending
All right,
Bryce Green
great,
through.
everybody. I should have a sound now. Okay, Bryce Green, how you doing?
I'm good, Santita. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Got Dr. Shanita Knighton who's just listening in with us today. But how much time do we have, Devin?
Give me one sec. About 3.5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Well, it gives me a chance to pull some other things down. Okay, there we go. Okay. but thank you for being flexible. I'm going to have Jeff Cohen on at the top of the hour. Do you want to stay on with him? We're going to be talking about what's
I
happening
gotta
in
get.
NBC.
I might be able to stay on for a little bit, but I am
Look, you're up
got
against the
class
wall.
in the morning.
No, I'm sorry, sweetie. But I try to pull you in as much as I can. I'm a little selfish.
No, and I appreciate it.
A little selfish. I just think you're so brilliant. I want people to hear you and say, oh boy, but thank you so much. Hey everybody, I fixed the audio and the video because I just had a mess. Nothing was plugged in and everything was just off. It was crazy. And but Bryce, I think this is about to become the conflict of conflicts. I really do. Okay. There we go.
All right, 60 seconds, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Woo. Okay. Okay.
Ten seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate, to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. I do hope that you'll be meeting us in Oakbrook on Wednesday as we have this labor panel. It is from 3 to 5. We need you to register at heartlandsignal.com, heartlandsignal.com. How many of you are part of unions? Do you know how important unions are? I mean, President Reagan did a real job on us by breaking PATCO. I mean, who would have thought he would have fired a whole class of workers, let alone air traffic controllers? Well, he did that. And it was it was devastating to the union movement. That having been said, the union movement, as we're seeing with the UAW strike, which continues to hold strong and expand, well, unions matter, and unions are gaining strength as more and more workers are really understanding their power. And we are also going to be looking at not only the power of unions and the importance of unions, we're going to be looking at what you get out of a union, your retirement. We're going to have Jamila Muhammad back on the show. She's from Cisco. And why are we going to have her back? Because many of you are shocked that there are professions that will pay for you to be educated. So you come out of your education as masters of your craft, debt-free, making $50, $60, $70, $80,000 a year, and then $100,000+ a year. Yeah. So we're going to be talking with Jamila Muhammad about that tomorrow, because you have an opportunity to change professions. She was even talking about a 65-year-old MD who said, I've always wanted to do this, so why not? Went into the trades, and you can do that too. Let's not be snobs about what it is that we do. Oftentimes we are. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East. We've had more than 4,000 people dead, 2,600 more than, at least the official count is more than 2,600 Palestinians, more than 1,300 Israelis. That's too many people. And if you look at the corporate media, they're getting excited about the possibility of a ground war. Do you really think a ground war is going to go as simply as that? That they're just going to walk in and wipe out Hamas and many Palestinians? That's not going to happen. They're walking into someone's home, and with those tunnels and interesting ways of getting around Gaza, Hamas knows Gaza. IDF knows it too, but I think Hamas knows it a little bit better. There's an old expression that you never accept the invitation of your enemy. And when your enemy wants you to come into their house, you better watch it. We've got a lot going on here. And Hezbollah, they're fighting to the north. And Iran has drawn a red line in the sand. They have said, if you start the ground game in Gaza, we're getting involved. That is a game changer, Bryce Green, fairness and accuracy in reporting. It's just a game changer. This fight continues to expand. And so the progressives in Congress have said, okay, you know what we want to do? We want to have a ceasefire. Because, when you start negotiating a peace, you declare a ceasefire and you do that anyway. It saves lives. It really is the right thing to do. Why not do it here in the early part of the conflict? Everybody's saying, people are saying that Israel has the right to defend herself. Absolutely. But there's a fine line between defending oneself and seeking revenge. That does not give you justice. That does not give you justice. That was part of the genius of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He knew how damaged Black people were behind slavery and Reconstruction. Every time Rosa Parks looked herself in the face, she said, I see my slave master. She was a very light-skinned Black woman, straight, long hair down her back. And she said, that didn't make me feel good to think about the abuse of my foremothers, because almost all Black people are products of my father, he says, of Black foremothers and white forefathers. Dr. King said, no, we're not going to be armed. We're going to have the strength to love. We're going to choose community over chaos. So let's talk about that today, everybody. What about a ceasefire? What about a ceasefire? Indeed, the White House has called the call for a ceasefire disgraceful and repugnant. Okay, that's why I had to bring you on, Bryce Green. Disgraceful and repugnant? Ceasefire? Wow. What do you make of that?
Well, it seems that the United States is acting in the same tradition it always does, and supporting Israel right or wrong. That's been a U.S. policy ever since, really since the 60s, but especially over the Biden years and since the Trump years. The attack on Israel has prompted some of the most vicious calls for revenge, as you said, despite the fact that it's known that these calls for revenge will only exacerbate the underlying problems of the situation. The attack on Israel is primarily based on the fact that Israel maintains a strict and brutal occupation over the Palestinian people, and Gaza is especially bad since they live in an open-air prison where 2 million people can't leave without Israel's permission. They can't get food in. They can't get economic development. Israel controls the land, sea, and air in all of these places. And as a result of the Gaza blockade, poverty in Gaza is extreme. I was just reading a report yesterday that showed that 80% of children in Gaza, which make up half the population, 80% of them have experienced severe emotional distress, and half have contemplated suicide. So these are the circumstances, the situation that Israel is trying to exacerbate right now, and America seems to be fully on board with it. Now, it's good to see some pushback from American progressives at this, but again, it's it's quite the minority in Congress. Most Americans and most people in Congress, especially, they support this brutal campaign that Israel's doing, despite the fact that it's killed over 700 children already. And the fact that the Biden administration isn't calling for a ceasefire is disgusting and abhorrent, but it's also dangerous. As you said, other countries are poised to be more involved in this. We've seen some firefights from Syria. We've seen some firefights in Lebanon. We've seen some saber rattling from Iran. All of them are saying that do not go into Gaza because that would be tantamount to ethnic cleansing. And ethnic cleansing has been a goal of Israel for quite some time. It's not any secret that they would love for, quote, Gaza to sink into the sea or, quote, to turn it into a parking lot. Or we even have some Israeli politicians calling for what's called a Nakba 2.0. The Nakba was, of course, the major ethnic cleansing that created Palestine in 1948, or that created Israel in 1948, and expelling, almost 1 million Palestinians off their land, major massacres, atrocities. It was brutal. But you have Israeli politicians calling for that of the 21st century, and you have the Biden administration saying that, well, they have to do this. Otherwise, you're repugnant. You're disgusting. That's pretty. It's pretty dangerous, and it's pretty. It's just sad. It's just sad that this is the path that America has chosen to take. And even if the progressives are pushing back against this, the whole of the American political system is on board with it.
Well, and what's so sad is that, I want us to be very careful not to paint people with a broad brush. You have a vibrant and alive movement in America of the American Jewish community who do not sign on to this. Jewish Voices for Peace. They think this is repugnant. They think this is awful. They want a ceasefire. It was Medea Benjamin who was on Reverend Jackson's show, and she was on my show last week, and she said, "We need a ceasefire. Stop this." Phyllis Bennett said, "We need a ceasefire." You have a lot of people who say this, we're not going to win. You might extinguish a lot of people, but you're not going to win. And a lot of the goodwill that the Jewish community has been able to and absolutely have deserved in the post-World War II era, that can take a hit because no one likes to see someone vanquished. It's an awful thing. And so I want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. Call us at 773-763-9278. 763-773-763 WCPT. How is it that a call for a ceasefire, which you're going to have to call for anyway when you're looking for peace, that's repugnant? It's disgraceful, and that came from the White House, from the White House press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. I mean, how is that disgraceful and repugnant? There's a story that we're still trying to verify about the deleted tweets, Bryce Green. But no, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, did call for peace. Then he pulled the tweet down. I mean, that's not right. We need peace.
No, exactly.
And you need a ceasefire right now.
He called for a ceasefire. He called de-escalation.
Yeah.
And then there's a State Department memo circulating in which government officials are told not to bring up the words de-escalation or ceasefire or anything of the sort. It's because, as I said, the United States is running lockstep behind Israel's campaign of ethnic cleansing. And what's worse is that I don't know if your listeners have been following the media coverage closely, but it's been wall-to-wall coverage, largely from the Israeli perspective. You're seeing IDF soldiers getting on screen, unchallenged by the hosts. You're seeing generals, you're seeing Israeli officials, you're seeing American officials saying the same lines as the Israeli officials. And as a result of this coverage, 70% of Americans believe that Israel's attack on Gaza is justified. 70% believe that it's okay for Israel to kill 700 children in response to an attack. 70% of Americans believe that it's okay to ethnically cleanse, to starve, to force 1 million people out of their homes, then bomb them on their way while they're fleeing. They believe that it's okay to cut off the water and electricity and internet service to a whole 2 million people as they're being bombed. They think it's okay to murder journalists. They think it's okay to bomb civilians. It's pretty striking how the reality of war has been hidden from the American public. We're seeing the images of the Israeli victims, but we're not seeing the images of the Palestinian victims. And, if you're claiming to care about human life, if you're claiming to value the sanctity of existence for a peaceful existence, then you would expect the media to at least have as much coverage for the Palestinian victims as the Israeli victims, but you don't see that at all. What you see is a wall-to-wall coverage, picking up Israel's propaganda lines, calling this Israel's 9/11 and saying that you're either with us or you're with Hamas, you're with the terrorists, and you keep seeing this line that Hamas is worse than ISIS. But in reality, an honest media system would express that even if the worst accusations against Hamas are true, then they pale in comparison to the crimes that Israel has perpetrated on the Palestinians over the last 20 years.
Well, let me give you
but
this.
This context is erased.
Well, let me give you this because the war has come home. Let me read to you from the Washington Post. There was a 6-year-old boy, Palestinian-American boy, who just died of his wounds. And he was stabbed 26 times by his landlord. This is from the Washington Post. For the past 2 years, relatives recalled Joseph Zupa, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was kind to the Palestinian mother and her young son who were renting part of his house in Plainfield, Illinois. It's about a half hour outside of Chicago. The 71-year-old landlord built the boy a treehouse, let him use a swimming pool, bought him toys, the child's relatives said. But over the past few days, according to the family, quote, something changed, close quote. And Zuba had grown hostile to his Arab tenants on Saturday, a week after Hamas militants launched a devastating attack on Israel. He allegedly knocked on the Palestinian family's door just after 11 a.m., and when the mother, Hanan Shaheen, answered, he assaulted her with a serrated military-style knife while yelling anti-Muslim sentiments, forcing her to run to the bathroom to call 911, according to local authorities and the family statements at a news conference yesterday. When she emerged from the bathroom after calling police, according to the accounts, she found this 71-year-old man attacking her 6-year-old child, Wadia Al-Fayumi, who later died of his wounds. He had been stabbed 26 times. She was stabbed at least half a dozen times. They stabbed this man, this 71-year-old man, stabbed this boy 26 times.
Awful. It's awful, but this is the result you get when you have unchecked genocidal rhetoric being spread on the airwaves by people who are thought to be authorities, who are thought to be serious people. Well, they're saying that they want to flatten Gaza, they want to turn it into a parking lot. They're saying all these horrible things. They're saying they want to destroy this entire enclave.
You want to erase people?
They want to erase them.
Oh, then that's what I'm quoting someone from the IDF. I'm like, are you serious right now? Do you know that people said this about you 60, 70 years ago? This is horrible. You have not learned anything. And that's what is heartbreaking to me. I want to bring on a couple of callers. Stay right there, Bryce. Lorna from North Carolina. Lorna, where I was born in the Big G. In Greensboro, North Carolina, in the Big G.
Oh,
How you doing, Lorna? How you doing,
thank
Lorna?
you, Santita, for the warm welcome.
Oh.
I have a question that I've been dying to ask somebody because I just don't understand much about the whole situation. I had heard that, there was the recent Jewish holiday when this all fired up. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I understand that where they have that sacred area, the Temple Mount and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and yes. where Muhammad supposedly ascended into heaven, and the Wailing Wall, that's sacred to Christians, Jews, and Muslims, that there was a long-standing agreement with the Muslims that the Hasidic Jews could come into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but not pray. It was a very long-standing agreement that they could come in during their holiday. And I had heard that so many Hasidic Jews came in, much more than ever was seen there before, and that they decided that they were going to go ahead and pray. And that was not the agreement that they had had for a very decades, and that there were outreaches from the Muslims to the government to please do something to assist with this being overwhelmed in this situation. And was that something that triggered this whole conflict?
You know what, Lorna, and I'll Bryce, you can absolutely weigh in on this. The conflict is decades old, Lorna.
Yes.
You can have triggers, but it's decades old. Before Palestine was partitioned, Beirut, Lebanon, which is where you have a lot of Palestinians today, was known as the Paris of the Middle East, much like Casablanca. I mean, this was where the very wealthy went, and they had a lovely, lovely time. And they did that in Palestine as well. And so it was a place where you had an unspoken agreement that no one owned these holy sites because they're central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So the tenuous agreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bryce, was that hands off. Nobody owns this because we all own it, and we're all stewards of this. Okay, so when you say so now what we've done is politicized that which is religious. Does that make any sense to you, Lorna? And that becomes highly problematic. Bryce, why don't you jump in?
Right. Well, the issue of the Al-Aqsa Mosque was one of the major ones that was a trigger to the more recent discontent among the Palestinian people. Not only did Muslims are typically granted access to this holy site, despite the fact that it's largely an Israeli-controlled area. But what repeatedly happened in the run-up to this attack was that Muslim worshippers, Arab worshippers, were violently attacked within the mosque. The mosque was assaulted by Israeli security forces just so they could let their own people in, and they prevented Palestinians from actually going to the mosque. And many people were injured and attacked in these events, but these are part of a broader rise of attacks on Palestinians, especially in the West Bank, where pogroms of Jewish settlers would go and attack and murder, torture, and mutilate Palestinians, the regular people who just got kicked off their land. And, of course, they were supported by the Israeli security forces. So throughout all of this, and of course, you also have the increasing expansion of settlements, which means kicking Palestinians out of their homes and then replacing them with Jewish settlers. And so this has been a sore point for Palestinians for years and years and years. But over the last year especially, the rates at which these violent acts were occurring was dramatically increasing, and global attention to these things were dramatically decreasing. If you want to look at the number of dead Palestinians in just this calendar year before the Hamas attack, well, it rose into the hundreds. But that didn't get a lot of media coverage. And that's the sort of lopsided coverage I'm talking about when we say that only Israel's side is getting out. The Palestinians are enduring a lot of violence, a lot of suffering that gets ignored by the West. But Israel very much understands that the more violence it metes out on the Palestinians, the more risk of violence it is itself. And so, as I said, any violence that happens in the occupied territories, well, you can blame the individuals, and you should blame the individuals involved. The overriding circumstances are dictated by Israel. And so Israel bears primary responsibility. They can end the occupation, but they choose not to.
And Lorna, are you still there?
I am, thank you.
You know what? I think we also, just as you listen to the coverage, as you observe the coverage, have you not noticed that Israelis are killed and the Palestinians are just dead? Right? You have an
well, I don't have a television, so I only listen to radio.
Bless your heart. Well, you know what? One is using the active voice where someone is killed by someone else and other people just pop up dead. I want balance.
It took me until
Oh no, please, please, please.
It took me until yesterday to hear the number of people dead on both sides, because prior to that, I wasn't hearing that. And now, so that's several days after this began. I know that was a neglected fact.
Well, we're going to talk about at the top of the hour. We're going to talk about MSNBC, because there have been several published reports that their three Muslim anchors, led by Ali Velshi, had been suspended. That's not exactly true. Jeff Cohen, a co-founder of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, is going to give us really the contours of what's happening there. But what we're looking for, Lorna, and it happens in television and radio, we're not getting balanced coverage. And, if you want to talk about peace, if you want to talk about a ceasefire, people rain tarnation down on you. And you know what, Lorna, I'm like, wait a minute. If you don't shoot your way into peace, you have to negotiate your way into it. And there will be, and ceasefires are declared so that you can get to peace. And I don't see folks really wanting to give us a pathway to peace. And Lorna, stay with us so we can talk during the break. Bryce, I've got about a minute for you.
All right. I just want to echo what you said about not shooting your way towards peace. As I said earlier, the striking fact was that many Americans support what Israel is doing. But that's, par for the course for the American people. If we recall, after 9/11, the bloodlust in America was palpable. But no one argues today that our response to 9/11 has made the world safer, has made Americans safer, has made anyone's lives better. Everyone routinely understands that if America had de-escalated after an attack on its soil, many lives would have been spared, many parts of the world would be a lot better, and many families would remain intact. But everyone knows this, but even now they're deciding to go the path of war. And that's dangerous. That should trouble us all. You should encourage the people around you to take a deeper look at the circumstances that led to this attack. You should encourage, if you're a political person, you should encourage your, political friends to oppose this brutal Israeli aggression, this clear call for ethnic cleansing, this clearly nearly genocidal campaign of the Israelis. This is the again and never again, but it doesn't seem to be permeating through the mainstream media. And so this will be one of the great tragedies of our time if we're not active.
Yeah, indeed, they're waiting for the ground offensive to begin. There will be so much death, and it's so unnecessary. Sending you much love, Bryce Green. Lorna, stay right here. We're going to talk for a few minutes during the break, right here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Let's talk about what's happening at MSNBC. Were the Muslim anchors fired, put on ice? What happened? Jeff Cohen's going to talk to us about it in just a minute. Lorna?
Right now?
Lorna?
Good morning. How are you, Santita? Nice to have an opportunity to talk with you and get some input from you and your guests.
Oh, I hope it's been helpful to you in some way.
Oh, it's so interesting. I often tell people what I learn on your show, and I've told 1,000 people about it.
Oh,
but
bless your
people
heart.
don't seem to tune in. Yeah,
That's okay. We're getting viewers and callers from some of everywhere, and it's a process. It's
well,
a process.
my old dad, who is almost 100, has gotten into watching free speech TV.
Well,
so
see,
at least
that's
he
a
gets
good thing.
Stephanie and he does. He gets Stephanie and Tom Hartman. Are you on free speech TV?
No, I'm not. But
Okay.
I'll be on something soon.
Well, I might be able to hook him up at that point because he's always interested. He'll be interested in what you have to say.
Well, then you know what you should do? Just have him come on to YouTube if you can do that, because that's where we are.
Sending Jeff Cohen through.
He's not up this early.
Oh, well, but if you go out, if you can look at he can look at the show. Yeah.
Okay.
He can look
Just
at it.
pull
You
it up,
can
pull
look
up
at it.
an older version. Yep.
And
Yep.
he can hear you today if you pull up the show. What did you say?
Well, he doesn't wake up for another 2 or 3 hours.
It'll be up there forever. It's archived. I put
Oh, I
the
see what
Santita
you're
Jackson
saying.
show up every single day.
Right. Sorry about that.
No. But where are you in North Carolina?
I'm just outside of Charlotte.
Okay. Like I love.
I
North
love that you
Carolina.
thought I was from Greensboro. I'm going to go now and visit there. I've only been here 2 years.
The Big G. Look, that's my
Yeah,
parents met and married
yeah.
in college, and I was born
Oh,
when they were in
great.
school. Yeah. So I mean, during the
Oh, well, thanks to you. Yeah.
I thank God for it. I was born right there in See, show you how old I am. I was born in L. Richardson Hospital for colored women.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, since I've come out here, I've enjoyed learning about the South. I've lived in New Mexico for 35 years and a couple other places, and this is a whole new thing for me. So I'll be interested in learning about the hospital and everything else I can pick up.
Oh, it's a beautiful place. You got all these universities down there. I've always had a great affection for North Carolina, and it's just beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful down there.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Oh. Well, thank you for taking my question. I can't help but imagine how astonishing it was after the Muslims, Palestinians have given up so much to see that the Hasidic Jews were coming with this attitude that they could pray in the Al-Aqsa Mosque during their Holy Week, and storming it is what I understand,
Absolutely.
like huge numbers. And I just can't imagine if I was in their shoes thinking that, oh my gosh, I got to give up one more thing. How can this even be?
Well, and it's religious too. That becomes, it just, and I just urge you to help people to understand that all Jewish people don't sign on to this. You see this young Palestinian American boy who was stabbed 6 years of age, stabbed 26 times. 26 times.
I just I'm crushed to think of that child's last moments, and his mother and and I'm an occupational therapist, and I realize that dementia is going to play a big role in a lot of the problems that we have coming up as our population tips towards more seniors than we've ever had before.
Yes. So, I don't, but they said something changed in him over the past few days, that just hearing all of this, how awful these Muslims are.
Right.
Something they see, because he gave this boy access to his pool, built him a tree house, did all these wonderful things for him. And then can you imagine the force that it takes? The ferocity. Stabbing
I can't imagine the absolute switch in that man's mind. But I understand, our seniors all feel vulnerable because of our social network, our social safety net.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are feeding them this propaganda.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they're suffering loss of their senses, various senses. Just naturally, even if they're not having dementia or other problems. And they're plugged into television 24/7 sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's hurtful. It's very, very hurtful.
Yeah.
And this boy.
Yeah, and we know for a fact that if it wasn't people plugged into the television propaganda machine, they wouldn't be behaving that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I want to thank you for tuning into the show. It means so much. It really.
Oh, thank you, Santita. Well, your courage and your family's courage and what you've done over the years has meant a lot to us too.
Oh, we're in this together, my dear sister.
Thank you, love.
We'll send you so much love, my North Carolina sister.
Take good care.
That's right there.
Take good care, my sister, and don't give up the fight.
I will not.
Keep hope alive.
I know you didn't. Okay.
There you go.
You're right. I'm going to do that. Okay. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, Santita. I'm going to hop off and get ready for class, but thanks for having me on.
Honey, always.
1 minute, everyone.
Oh, do we have Mr. Cohen on?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
Sending you so much
Yes.
love. Here, I got you up so early. Don't hate me. Don't hate me.
It's all right. I'm up.
Don't hate me. After you're out partying, the rainbow should have been at that party last night.
Well, you were there in spirit. It was a gathering of FAIR, the Progressive Media Watch group.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my father and mother send their love to you.
That's so sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think and people that have read FAIR since the beginning, we were staunch advocates for fair coverage of all the presidential candidates in 1988, but Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was running such a strong campaign, did not get the fair coverage
10
that
seconds.
others did.
Well, thank
I'm
you
sorry, 25.
for pointing that out and for being an advocate for that which is fair. Didn't want you to put the thumb on the scales. I'm just glad that you were able to say,
Now
wait a
10.
minute. Okay, we're coming in. That this was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
right. Stand by. We're up.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate, no place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about MSNBC. Did they sideline or fire or sideline their 3 Muslim hosts? There's a little bit more to this story, a lot more to this story than is being told. And so we wanted to get the accurate reading of it. And Jeff Cohen, co-founder of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, is going to give us those contours in just a couple of minutes. And then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have one of the foremost activists and really illuminators of the Arab world, James Zogby. He will be joining us from the Arab American Institute. Someone I've known practically all of my life. He was the deputy campaign manager for the 84 and 88 Jackson campaigns. And there's been no more stalwart or staunch voice for Arab Americans, for the Arab people and for human rights in the world. And we're so grateful to have him and, this great advocate for a free and honest press, Jeff Cohen. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. The humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip is deepening. About 600,000 people have been displaced, and at least 2,670 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Palestinian people. Food, fuel, and water are running out as negotiations continue over the delivery of aid. The death toll from Hamas's attacks rose at least by 1,400 people. Israeli troops are preparing for a ground invasion and exchanged fire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. President Biden said a new Israeli occupation of Gaza would be a big mistake. What do you think? Call us at 773-763-9278. A gag order hearing in Donald Trump's January 6th case will be held today. The judge overseeing his federal election obstruction case in Washington, D.C. will hear arguments on whether she should restrict what he can and cannot say about the case. Republicans nominated another candidate for the House Speaker on Friday. He still doesn't have the votes, but he has been nominated. Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan and the drugstore chain Rite Aid filed for bankruptcy. Indeed, 2 of our leading lights in entertainment made their transitions over the past couple of days. Rudolph Isley from the Isley Brothers. Oh my goodness, part of the original as well as the 3+3 expanded group, made his transition at the end of last week. And then Suzanne Summers, of course, we remember her from Three's Company. She'd been battling cancer for a couple of decades. And one day before her 77th birthday, which is today, she made her transition yesterday with her family at her side, sending them all our love. Thank you, Suzanne Summers and Rudolph Isley, for all of the love and the joy that you brought into our lives down through the years. Now, I don't want to neglect this particular headline. This Palestinian boy, a 71-year-old landlord, Joseph Zuba, stabbed him 26 times, this 6-year-old child, just a half hour outside of Chicago, and he died of his wounds. He stabbed his mother, Palestinian-American mother, half a dozen times. She is in critical condition, recovering from her wounds. We're going to follow that story more tomorrow and find out just what happened. They said that he had such a loving relationship with his boy, but over the past week, his family said, quote, something changed, close quote, and he became hostile to his tenants and tried to kill them, and did indeed kill the 6-year-old boy, stabbing him 26 times. Hope that you'll join Joan Esposito and I for a live in-person union strong panel. You're going to find out the importance of unions, how you can unionize, what you get out of a union. Did you know that you can get solid middle class jobs, and you can also, without being a wealthy person, get a financial advisor in Megan Financial? Did you know that you can also go to school and come out debt free? You're paid to go to school, $25,000 a year, and then you come out of school making 50, 60, 80, 90, $100,000 a year, even upwards of 140, $100,000 a year within a couple of years of having mastered or learned these trades. We're going to be talking with Jamila Muhammad about that. But you've got to know that there's a whole class of work that we're missing out on. So many of us want to go to college. I get it. It's great. But different people have different gifts. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to God, in fact, to hone the gifts that you've got. So please join us at 2021 Swift Drive in Oak Brook from 3 to 5 on Wednesday, October 18th. It's going to be great, everybody. We're going to have a great, 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 great time. Joan Esposito and I, we want to see you there. Registration is free. Attendance is free, but we need you to register. We want to get a sense of how many people are going to be there. Please go to heartlandsignal.com. This event is proudly sponsored by the Chicago Federation of Labor, Roofers and Waterproofers Local 11, Smart Locals 265, Meckett Financial, and Cisco. What happened with Ali Velshi and his two fellow Muslim anchors at MSNBC? Were they sidelined? Were they fired? Well, it's not quite as simple as the headlines say. This is the headline from Semaphore. MSNBC suspends 3 Muslim anchor shows amid Israel-Hamas war. And Mediaite, someone said, this is BS. Of course, he said the whole thing, as an anti-Trump host lashes out over a report that MSNBC anchors had been sidelined or fired during in this reporting of the Israel-Hamas war. And to be fair, they were not taking a pro-Palestinian line at all. That's not what they were doing. So let's talk about this. I said, I want to get the story straight because it just sounded so it's so stunning. We need to find out the truth of it. We really do. So Jeff Cohen, indeed, there's no one more iconic in the progressive space. And indeed, as a fighter for the free press, the only protected class of employees in our Constitution, because in order for our republic to stand, in order for the democracy to develop, you got to have a free press. And you need to have, and a free press has to be a fair press. No one has fought for that more. So he and Norman Solomon created something called, fairness and accuracy in reporting. I have them here almost every day. And I'm so grateful for them and their work. I said, okay, they were having their reunion last night. I caught them in the middle of it. I said, would you come on in the morning and tell us what's going on? Because this report is so disturbing, Mr. Cohen, that it just doesn't even sound like anything like this could happen, but it could. What happened?
Yeah. Well, I've got no reason to defend MSNBC. I consider most of its coverage of the last 9 days of fighting, Israel-Gaza war of 9 days. MSNBC has been so generally one-sided, with a few exceptions, in favor of Israel, and that Israeli civilians matter more than Palestinian civilians who live in Gaza. Because you'll remember that I was at MSNBC as a high-level employee, and I was on the air in 2002 and 2003 until, along with my colleague Phil Donahue, we were all fired because we were questioning the U.S. invasion of Iraq before it happened. We said it wouldn't be wise, it would be a quagmire, it would kill all these civilians. We turned out to be right, and none of us were rehired at MSNBC. So in terms of this current controversy, I keep seeing Ali Velshi on the air. I keep seeing Ayman Mohyeldin on the air. And I saw Ali Velci yesterday co-hosting a show. So this idea that they're no longer allowing 3 Muslim hosts to anchor or co-anchor shows is not accurate. Now, it's possible the report from Semaphore is the reason these people are all on the air, but I never saw them disappear. You know, in a time of crisis or war, a lot of the normal schedules gets changed. So I don't know about this story. I just know that MSNBC's, with the exception of Ali Velci, anyone can go online and see like a 4-minute report Ali Velci gave about the background to the current war between Israel and Gaza. And see that he's still speaking out loudly. He's the exception at MSNBC. Most of the coverage in U.S. news media is from the perspective of Israel. Israeli civilians count for more. They're more worthy of major news coverage than civilians, Palestinian civilians. More Palestinian civilians have died in the last 9 days of fighting than in Israel. The war, of course, was started by the brutal, heinous attack by Hamas that killed so many civilians and seemed to target civilians for some of the killing and some of the kidnapping. So it starts 9 days ago, but the conflict started decades ago. And, you know, when I'm Jewish, I've been to Israel, I've been to the Palestinian occupied territories that Israel occupies so viciously in the West Bank. So I know the issue very, very well. But I am tired of U.S. media coverage that tries to tell the U.S. public that Israeli civilians and the children that were killed by Hamas, that those victims are so much more newsworthy than the already thousands of civilians and so many children in Gaza that have already been killed in the last 9 days. And everyone knows, as in every previous Gaza-Israel war, that sometimes there's 10, 20 times the civilian casualties in Gaza than there are in Israel. I mean, so it sickens me to see that in this day, 2023, that we don't have a news media that tells us that all life is precious and that the Israeli civilians that were killed and taken hostage, that was a brutal crime, a heinous crime. But when the civilians of Gaza are killed, somehow that's okay. That's the U.S. at war. I mean, look at the on MSNBC. Look at the rhetoric. I mean, when bombs are falling on populated civilian areas of Gaza, and it's the size of Philadelphia, but it's more concentrated. There's more people per square meter. When there's this bombing, aerial bombardment that's killing all these civilians, in the U.S. news media on television, you hear that, Israel is bringing more pressure on Gaza. No, they're not bringing pressure. They're killing civilians. It's always called an air campaign. They won't call it bombing. It's an air campaign. And on the other hand, when Hamas did its dirty deeds, it was called in the U.S. media accurately, so, brutal, this is terrorism, they're killing civilians. It's just, they're different verbs. There's different words that are used to describe it. And, I've been following the oppression of Palestinians for so many decades. And, right now, the electricity is off in Gaza. The water is, the drinking water is basically run out already. And when you listen to the United Nations experts, if it wasn't for the United Nations, the suffering in Gaza decade after decade would have been so much worse. But the United Nations expert, I heard one from UNICEF last night, who talked about how, there's a lot of child morbidity. There's a lot of children that die in Gaza, even when there's not war, even previous to the 9 days of war. And 25% of the children who die in Gaza die from unsafe drinking water. And right now, from top to bottom, there's not safe drinking water anymore in Gaza. There's no electricity. And in normal times, when there's not these 9 days of fighting, there's very spotty electricity. It's an open air prison, what Israel has done to Gaza for the last 16 years. So I was in the occupied territories. I was in the West Bank, all over the West Bank 10 years ago. And I was with the nonviolent activists, the ones who organized marches when the right-wing extremist Israeli settlers poison their wells or take their land or terrorize them or cut down their olive trees. And it's the terror. In an article when I came back to the U.S. from Israeli-occupied West Bank, I likened what I witnessed from the extremist right-wing settlers of Israel protected by the Israeli soldiers. It reminded me of the Ku Klux Klan terrorizing African Americans in the American South in the 50s, in the early 60s, in the 30s. It was state-sponsored or state-enabled terrorism of one group of people by another group of people. And that's the kind of oppression that has gone on for decades, and the U.S. government has enabled it, which is so sickening to me. Right now, there's several members of Congress that are trying to get the U.S. government to do what most of the U.S. public wants, which is work for a ceasefire, try to prevent the calamitous invasion of Gaza that's going to happen unless the U.S. stops it. And so you've got a few heroic U.S. Congress members trying to get the Biden administration on the side of peace and diplomacy and ceasefire and de-escalation, but that's not the role that the U.S. government has played in the last 9 days, and it's not the role that the U.S. government has played in the last 55 years. You always have the U.S. administration. We do not like the expansion of Israeli settlements into Palestinian land. And it happens every year. And the U.S. keeps giving Israel more military, more aid than any country has ever received in the history of our country or the world. We just keep giving them more and more aid. So when I see these Hamas terrorists, and that's what I call them, I realize, I hearken back to an individual who has played a huge role in my life, which is Martin Luther King Jr. And he used to say, when there were riots in the inner cities, which he condemned in 64 in Harlem, 65 in Watts, later 67 in my hometown of Detroit, and King used to say that kind of violence, the riots, are the language of the unheard. The riots are the language of the oppressed. And he always quoted JFK Jr. He said, King would always say in his speeches, those who make nonviolent change impossible make violence inevitable. And when I was in Israel and when I came back, and what I've witnessed for decades is exactly that if you don't get your foot off the neck of the Palestinian people, there will always be terror groups. They could flatten Gaza and kill every Hamas fighter, which of course is impossible. Every time they bomb Gaza, they say they're going to totally neutralize and weaken Hamas, and Hamas keeps coming back. If they did wipe out Hamas, there'll be a new group committing violence, because I spent days going from one part of the West Bank Israeli occupied West Bank, Palestinian land, Palestinian villages, and there were nonviolent activists in every place I went to. In fact, there's a documentary about one of these nonviolent movements of Palestinians. It was nominated for an Oscar, a documentary movie called Five Broken Cameras, which I encourage people to watch. But I was there with all these nonviolent activists, and they said, we get called violent and we get put in jail. Our kids get put in jail. Our kids are detained. So they've made nonviolent change impossible. And that's why they make these violent terror groups inevitable. And until Israel makes peace with the Palestinians and quits expanding, there are going to be these awful terror groups, and I condemn what Hamas did. I will always condemn what Hamas does. Yet, I was there with every nonviolent activist I met in the West Bank had pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. on their walls. And they tried a different approach, and they don't get anywhere.
Yeah, it's not, but I'm not surprised. I'm just the viciousness. I only have 1 minute left, but you got to come back, Mr. Cohen. The viciousness of the IDF, but I think that's just the brutality of root power.
Yeah.
Because you see this is not exclusive to the IDF. You go and you see armies everywhere you go committing atrocities. That's what helped to get us out of Vietnam. I was a baby, but Lieutenant Calley, shooting up all of the men, women, and children in a ditch. This is what I mean.
And there were lots of those incidents throughout Vietnam. It wasn't just My Lai. But I agree with you. And the Israel's got this superior military. It's one of I think the 5th strongest military in the world. It's paid for by U.S. taxpayers. I mean, I go back to, when Andy Young was the United Nations ambassador, and your dad was speaking out for 2 states. There should be 2 states side by side. And if you spoke out for 2 states, that the Palestinians should have their own state, you were called a terrorist. You were called, you're anti-Semitic. You hate Jews. Even when Jews were some of the leading people talking about we need a Palestinian state next to Israel to end the fighting. But that was considered subversive in the 1980s and 90s. And your dad was a hero in calling for 2 states. And then remember, Andrew Young lost his job at the United Nations for talking to the secular leaders of Palestine, the Palestine Liberation Organization. And I'm sure President Jimmy Carter regretted years later what he had done
he didn't want to
in firing Andy Young.
He didn't want to fire him. My mother talked him into going to see the Palestinians.
Jimmy Carter's been a hero on this. Carter's been a hero on this.
I'll tell you during the break. Jeff Cohen, everybody. Fairness, but rootsaction.org. The guys who did the Don't Run Joe campaign, that's who this is.
Yeah. But also fair.org for media criticism.
Look, they're on every week. You got to come on with me.
Yeah, all right, I know. And Janine Jackson says hello.
Oh, I love Janine, and I love Jim Maracus. These are my people. I love them.
Yeah, and Jim, Jim grew up in Chicago.
Okay. It's my guy. And we've got your friend Jim Zogby. Stay right here so you can say hello to him before you go. Sending you so much love. I feel like this is old home week for Santita Jackson. Back in just a minute. You know what, Mr. Cohen? My mother had come back from Lebanon, and she was so devastated. I had gone to the World Youth Festival in '78, and I met Yasser Arafat there, and I was like 14, and they were very, very nice. And I came back, Mom and Dad, they said they want me to come to Lebanon. My parents were like, no, but they'd been invited many times, so my mother went in advance of my father going with her months later. When she came back, she was so devastated. She went to see Andrew Young, Uncle Andy up in New York, who was the UN ambassador. And she said, look, you got to talk to the Palestinians. I never knew this was happening over there. And I we've got to do something. She said, Jackie, this is the third rail of American politics. I will lose my job. And my mother said, Andy, what would Martin do? Are you serious right now? You can see, you can back channel this. Oh my gosh. When he was fired, my mother was like horrified. She said, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I didn't. In the first place.
Well, he tried to do it. He tried to do it quietly.
He tried.
And yeah.
He did. I mean, and he holds my mother
Sending
responsible
James
for.
Ogby through.
Oh, stay right there. He holds my mother responsible for losing his job right now. So, but James Ogby, I've got Jeff Cohen here.
Hi.
Hi, Jim Zogby. You're one of my heroes going back decades.
Oh my God! I don't know whether to be pleased about being the hero or upset that you go back decades to talk about it.
Well, I remember when you were the one pro-Palestinian voice that would get on with Ted Koppel at Nightline.
You know, yeah. As I say to people, I used to be somebody.
I have the same feeling. Yeah, I used to be famous too.
Oh, you guys! Let me, on behalf of the whole
I'm
world,
going to let you guys go.
But let me say this: on behalf of everybody, thank you, Jeff Cohen, for your work. James Zogby, thank you for your work. Even though we're living in a very, very tough time, 40 years ago we couldn't mention Palestinians. 40 years ago, you did not have prominent Jewish voices for peace and for human rights and on and on. And it's because of the work that you all have done that you've made the world a better place. We've got work to do. And I want to thank you, Jeff Cohen. And I want to thank you, James Ogby, while I have you both on the phone at the same time. I thank God
and
for you.
Thank you, Santita. And remember, there was one leading Jew who was always speaking out, and his name is Noam Chomsky, and he's now ailing. He's 94. He's not doing well. I'm in touch with him. Yeah.
Would you please give him my love?
All right. I'm going to let you guys. All right. Bye-bye. Keep up with the great work.
Thank you, Jeff. And say hi to him for me, too, okay?
Yeah, I will. And I'll say hi to Norman Solomon. All right. Bye-bye.
Listen, Noam was one of the earliest supporters of my Palestine Human Rights Campaign, and you're right, he's a hero.
Yeah, he's a legend. He's the reason I started FAIR.
1 minute, everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Zogby, I'm so glad I have you here.
Good. After that little love fest, maybe we can have a conversation.
Oh, yes.
I love Jeff Cohen. I love his work.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the Palestinian boy who was killed here?
Oh, God. Yes. And the totally deranged man who did it.
He wasn't deranged.
Oh, my God.
He was mean. He was fine until the last week.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give him crazy. I'm not going to give him crazy. I'm going to give him mean. I'm going to give him that. That's evil. That's evil. That's evil. And we need to let crazy people be crazy and evil people be evil. His family said something changed over the past week.
He stabbed the little boy 26 times.
Who does that?
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, if you don't mind, I'm gonna open with that. No, it's a horrible thing. And his mother's in the hospital right now.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Meet me and the Morning Star, sending you much love, Paula. I want you to get well soon on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. So many of you are tuning in as we talk about this Middle East crisis, this Israeli Hamas Hezbollah, or it continues to expand, and we're going to be talking about that. You have congresspersons who are calling for peace, but the White House is calling their calls for peace disgraceful and repugnant. Okay. I can't wait to talk with this gentleman about this. Indeed, no one has stood more valiantly, more firmly for the acknowledgement of the humanity of Arabs and Arab Americans. Indeed, he's the founder of the Arab American Institute. He's also the deputy manager and senior advisor to Reverend Jesse Jackson in the 84 and 88 campaigns. You know, the outlaw campaigns, particularly 84. but did a lot of great work. For the first time in the history of American presidential politics, let alone top tier politics, you actually had an Arab American desk, but it was also next to the Jewish desk. And you had an LGBTQ plus desk. No one was more central to making sure that that happened than James Zogby. And indeed, we all owe him a great debt of gratitude for all the work that he's done down through the years. All the work that you've done down through the years. And I could get I am emotional about it because I just thank God for you today. And I thank you for being with us today, James Zogby. I'm humbled to have you on the show today. I wanted to ask you about something that really it broke my heart. And I want to thank Robert for pushing this story. And it's the Washington Post reports it, but it happened just outside of Chicago. For the past 2 years, they said that Joseph Zuba was kind to this Palestinian family, this mother and son who stayed in their home. 71 years of age, he built the boy a treehouse. He let him use the pool. He bought him toys. He almost became like a grandfather to him. But his family said that over the past few days, really since last Saturday, quote, something changed, close quote. So on Saturday, he knocked on the door screaming anti-Muslim sentiments, barged into their home, assaulted the mother. She ran to the restroom. She was being attacked with a serrated military knife. And she called 911, but she comes out of the restroom to find this man stabbing her 6-year-old son. He stabbed him 26 times, and the boy died. And she's in critical condition. The war has come home. That is my point, everybody. The war has come home. I mean, and people are fighting about this. And so, just as we talk about what the Biden administration is doing, not doing, calling calls for peace and a ceasefire repugnant and disgraceful, could you give me a comment on that particular case? I mean, what can one say?
Yeah, evil and disturbing in so many ways, because of the vulnerability that it reveals about people here who face real threats. I know myself. I mean, 3 people went to jail in the last 2 decades for threatening my life and the life of my family. Will murder you and slit the throat of your children. And the judge asked me, won't you have compassion for this man? He's a good family man who made a mistake. And I said, good family men don't threaten to slit the throats of children. Look, there is a problem, a long history of anti-Arab stereotypes and sentiment and negative projections. The denial of the humanity of Palestinians in particular. Administration has unfortunately fueled some of that by its refusal, especially in the early days of after what Hamas did, which was pure, unadulterated evil, no question about it. But the administration characterized the event in a way that did not do anything other than encourage a reaction to it that Israel is now undertaking. It was a kind of a go-get-em guys mindset. And I think that as, we met with leadership in the White House on Friday, and we said, you've got to talk about the humanity of Palestinians. It's having an impact here in the country. We've gotten reports of student groups feeling threatened and being threatened and silenced on some campuses. And we've gotten reports of death threats to folks. And I don't hold the administration responsible, but I do hold them accountable for the failure to take a leadership role in speaking about the humanity of peoples. The death toll now in Gaza is twice that of Israel. And frankly, the cries of Palestinians have to be heard in the same way that the cries of the Jewish people of Israel are heard. Evil is not justified by other evil. You cannot do what Hamas did. You cannot do what Israel is doing and the U.S. has to play the adult in the room, and they have not done it. They simply haven't done it.
What is the Biden administration doing? Because it was before, I think, for the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, to call the congressional call for ceasefire. I mean, and they were not just doing this independently. Many Americans are saying, whoa, 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 this can get out of hand very quickly. And it is. Now Hezbollah's in it. Uh, she called it repugnant and disgraceful. A ceasefire? Mr. Zogby,
I have to assume she was just stupid and doesn't know what the hell she was saying. I have to assume that, because otherwise there's a level of meanness and just lack of human compassion that would be very difficult for me to understand coming from somebody working at that level in the White House. Ceasefire and saving civilian lives repugnant. I couldn't even begin to imagine how somebody in that privileged position could make such a comment. And Rashida and Ilhan have been struggling with the fact that they are such a minority in Congress, and trying to give some human bring some human element into the discourse, and to be treated that way by the White House, just shameful. And we've asked the White House to repudiate those comments and to make it clear that there has to be a reasoned discourse about this. But, when we then saw the memos that had been leaked from the State Department, where the White House is telling them that words that diplomats cannot use are ceasefire or protecting civilians or words of that sort, that restraint. Can't use the word restraint. What is the administration saying other than, Israel, go do what you want to do, whatever you want to do, we got your back, and send 2 warships to say, even if you provoke Hezbollah into a conflict, we're going to get Hezbollah and have your back? I mean, this is the U.S. making itself complicit in a war that we should be trying to stop rather than fuel with our rhetoric. I frankly cannot understand what this administration is thinking, if they're thinking at all, and it is very dangerous. This is probably the worst response I've seen by an administration to a crisis in the Middle East.
Their reaction. What will it do? Is it fueling this? I mean, because the fact that Tony Blinken is Jewish, that's great. And I think all of our identities matter, particularly if we take the challenges that our forebears faced and we just say, I want to be better. I don't want people to suffer the way my ancestors suffered. I think that that's important. But when he walks into the Middle East and says, I come here not as a Secretary of State, but I come here as a Jew, I said, well, why would you do that? Why are you putting your thumbs on the scales that way? Because I don't think that's the thing that you need to say right now.
I frankly, and I don't get the whole thing, Santita. I mean, I've watched from the beginning how this administration has responded as if there were only one aggrieved people in the region. Certainly, the atrocities committed by Hamas early on were horrific. But this administration has been silent for the last 3 years about what Israel is doing in the West Bank, what Israel is continuing to do in Gaza, what Israel is doing now. They're finally saying, well, don't reoccupy Gaza, or you should turn the water back on. They have, for the last 6 days, Israel has denied water, fuel, and electricity, and food imports into Gaza. They're ordering 1.1 million people to evacuate the north, move to the south, where there's no facilities to care for them, to leave their homes. And all Palestinians can think of is they're forcing us out of our homes one more time. They're dispossessing us. 80% of the people in Gaza are already refugees, and we're making them refugees one more time. And the U.S. has not said a word about this at all. This is a mass expulsion of people, which amounts to a form of genocide. Look the definition up. It doesn't mean killing everybody. It means doing what Israel is doing right now and nothing to say about it. And that encourages them to commit these war crimes, and it makes us culpable. There's no other way around it. And we've offered them no vision of hope for the future. I just don't get it. I'm simply startled. And having met people in the White House in the top leadership roles in foreign policy and finding that they don't get it, it's not just the president, it's that the whole team sees only one humanity in the Middle East, and that's Israeli humanity. It doesn't see Palestinians as part of the human family.
But doesn't that hurt everybody ultimately? I don't see Israelis gaining from that. Ultimately,
no,
I see
at the
them
end of
getting
this,
hurt.
Israel will not be more secure because we've been down this road before. And at the end of it, when the dust settles and the tears dry, all you have are a whole lot more dead people, a whole lot more anger, a whole lot more desire for revenge, and neither side is more secure. Israelis will pay a price for this someday down in the future. And when I use the expression adult in the room, it almost trivializes what I mean. But I mean, somebody has to play the role of, this is not working, this is not good, you've got to change direction. And the only party that can do that is the United States, because we've been the coat holder, cheerleader, and arms supplier for Israel for these many years. And we're not willing to play a role other than that. It appears that's what we're doing.
Call us at 773-763-9278. How will we get out of this if they do not want to, if they're rejecting outright a ceasefire, the calls for a ceasefire? Where does the Biden administration want this to go?
Well, I don't know. And they will reap the whirlwind at the end of it, because having given Israel this go-ahead, having them, literally handed them the opportunity to walk deep into this pit that they're digging for themselves, we're going to have to play the role of digging them out when it's over, because this is a dead end. I remember Reagan kind of did the same thing in '82 when Israel invaded Lebanon. And we were silent, and we were silent, and we were silent. And as thousands died, and they laid waste to southern Lebanon. They wanted to get rid of the PLO, same thing that they're doing now, getting rid of Hamas. They were going to exterminate the PLO. They were all animals. That's the same rhetoric they're using today. And at the end of it, by the time you got to September and Reagan saw what a disaster had been created, he decided to pull the plug. And the Israelis were told to evacuate. And they did. And we sent in Marines to help them evacuate. And you know what happened? 243 of our Marines got killed in a bombing. And I mean, we were sending in the Marines to protect the Israelis and did nothing to protect the people of Beirut. And the same thing is going to happen here, in the sense that we are becoming a part of this conflict. And people in the region aren't going to forget that the United States is not the peacemaker. We're not the normalizer. We're not the people that bring people together. We're the people who are encouraging a war that is amounting to the extermination of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And that is not going to sit well in generations to come. And that these guys don't get it, I'm frankly stupefied. We've seen this history play out too many times before. And frankly, it's what's happening right in front of us now. So can the U.S. actually say to the Israelis no? Yes, we can. We can pull the plug. They are incredibly sensitive to what we say and do. Even if they say, oh, no, we won't, we're doing it, they will ultimately have to make the decision, because we're the only country that has their back.
So why don't we do it? I say that only because, if you really care about someone, you tell them the truth. And I'm seeing, I think it was the head of Croatia who said, the goodwill that I've had toward Israel, it's gone now. He said, you had me until the first 15 minutes of the attacks on the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at
Yeah.
Hamas is a creation of Israel and the United States and our intelligence community, because we didn't want to fool with
Yeah.
the PLO and Yasser Arafat. I mean, these are facts.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
these are their people. I don't. So I'm trying to figure out what is going on here.
And for the last 15 years, Israel elevated Hamas over the Palestinian Authority. And despite the fact they had several wars with them, at the end of each of those wars, they got rewarded. Hamas got rewarded and the PA was sidelined. And now we're saying the Palestinian Authority is irrelevant. Thank you, Israel, for making that happen, making it real. And now at the end of it, whenever there is an end to this, where are we going to be? A leaderless Palestinian people, an emboldened Israel that has committed hideous war crimes, a devastated Gaza, a U.S. with little or no respect across the Arab world. And thank you, Joe Biden.
I mean, what does that mean? Because
and when you talk about when you talk about the difficulty of talking about this, I mean, remember what your dad went through. I mean, they kind of like treated him as untouchable because he shook Arafat's hand. I mean, that was how bad it was. He violated a taboo. He talked to them. That's how bad it was then, and that's where it is now. I mean, these guys have brought it right back to square one. And frankly, we can say the word Palestinian, but we can't do anything for them.
Where do we go from here? I mean, because you have, and I'm listening to the syntactical game that they're playing in the media. You know, words matter,
Yeah.
everybody. Palestinians are dead. Israelis are killed. If you're killed, someone kills you. So someone's responsible for your death. Palestinians say, well, they just pop up dead. And I keep driving this point home, everybody, because Israel is no safer. In fact, they're more vulnerable than ever before. People can fear you and people can love you. And when they fear you, when you have this naked power and it's aggressive, people fear you, and then they don't feel that great about you. My father often says, you know, if you have power, be careful not to use it, because if you use it, you could abuse it. And if you abuse it, you will lose it. And I'm looking and I'm hearing them call people animals, and that these people need to be erased. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This doesn't sound like Rabbi Heschel to me. This is not Rabbi Heschel. This isn't Jeff Cohen. This isn't Norm Solomon. Carolyn Kazin, who you remember from the campaign.
My God, I remember Carolyn. Wonderful woman.
Listen, this is not these people we know. This is everybody, and I want people to understand that the entire Jewish American community and Jewish people in Israel do not stand for this. But in Israel, the government is so right-wing, they don't have the space to say anything.
Yeah. And you know why they're right-wing? Because we enabled it. There was a peace movement in Israel. It was a flourishing peace movement, but we sucked the very life out of them by giving the right wing free reign over everything. And at the end of the day, I remember people in the peace movement in Israel saying to me, if only the U.S. would say no to these right-wing governments, we would be empowered. But by not saying no, we gave them the sense that you can do whatever you want. And why should you listen to these goons on the left who are telling you, if we do this, the United States will punish us, when the U.S. never does punish us? So we discredited the peace movement in Israel. We sucked the very life, like I said, out of them and the political parties that represented them. And what we're left with is a creature of our own making, Netanyahu and the right-wing allies that he has in government. And look, if Netanyahu is out of office, it's not going to get better, because the political parties that will replace him are no better on this issue than he is. He is like Trump. You know, getting rid of Trump isn't going to change the Republican Party. It is what it is right now, and it's been a creature that has been 30, 40 years in the making, from Newt Gingrich on, from Pat Buchanan and Pat Robertson on. That's what it is. It's not Netanyahu. If Gantz replaces Netanyahu, it's not going to be happy days are here again. It's going to be a new face on a really, really awful right-wing government. And you know, America has a responsibility for having this get out of control without question.
In the last minute here, what would you like for the audience to know? I've got a guy who said there's no concern for murdered Israelis here on this station. That is not true. That is
Oh
not
my
true.
God. I mean, that's the problem is I want to save Israeli lives in the future by creating a just peace that keeps people feeling that they're respected and that they have anyway, listen, you want to know what to do? We have to defend Jamal Bowman. We have to defend Delia and Ilhan and Rashida and Corey and people who are speaking the truth about Palestinians and look just for Israelis and Palestinians alike, because they're going to come after them next year, and we have to defend them. So this is absolutely critical that we defend those who are defending justice and defending equal rights for both peoples. If we don't, it'll be a real setback next year.
James Zogby, Deputy Director of the 84 and 88 Jackson campaigns, those historic campaigns, the Arab American Institute. Indeed, I'm just honored that you were with us this morning, and I hope that you will come back. I really, really do.
Thank you. Anytime you call, Sandy.
You know,
Thank you.
See, there's some people who call me Sandy. I'm not Santita to them.
I remember in '84, one of the things I also did was kind of babysit for you guys. I sit in a hotel room with you. We play cards and stuff. I mean,
you
I
couldn't
can
help
call
it.
you whatever I want.
You absolutely you can. Plus,
thank you so much.
He and my
Santita.
parents, his wife and like my parents had 5 kids. I was like, who has 5 kids? in the modern times, we're not farmers anymore.
Those who take the biblical injunction to go forth and multiply seriously, that's who.
You sure did, and they're a beautiful family you have. I love you so much, James.
Thank you.
Oh, God bless you, and thank you for the work that you've done, everybody. I love you. Be safe, and
thank you.
Pray for peace, everybody. Pray for justice and for peace. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Mr. Zogby. You're just a jewel. You're an absolute jewel. Everybody, God bless you. I'm going to try and get some more information about this attack of this child in Plainfield, Illinois. Can you imagine stabbing a little boy 26 times? And I'm not willing to make Mr. Zuba crazy. No, I'm not going to do that. Some people are mean. They're mean. Some people have a touch of the evil and wicked in them. So don't say, oh, he just went crazy. No, his family said since Hamas attacked Israel and these long simmering tensions boiled over once again, that something changed in him. This latent anti-Muslim hatred came out. That's what it was. So don't make him crazy. He's not crazy. He's mean. He's evil. You have to snap if you're going to stab a 6-year-old boy 26 times. Are you kidding me? With a serrated military knife. Was there anything left of this child? I feel the same way about Israeli children. Aren't you tired of the death? And you're not going to intimidate me into silence and make me elevate anyone over anyone. I don't serve a God like that. That's anti-Christian. I'm a Christian woman. At least I'm trying to be. No one counts more than anybody else. Nobody. We're all God's children. However you see God, whatever your path to God is, even if you don't feel God exists, we're all children of the same Creator. We're all brothers and sisters, all of us. And we all need to grow up, spiritually and in our politics. And if we grow up spiritually, our politics will reflect that. No life is more valuable than another. No white life is more valuable than a black life, than a brown life, than a yellow life, than an indigenous life. That's the sickness we've got here. Israelis are not more valuable than Palestinians. They're all God's children. Let someone need a kidney, and an Israeli finds a Palestinian match. I don't think they're going to really care about where they're from. They're going to want that kidney, and vice versa. So stop it. Just stop. And I'm too old in this game to be intimidated by that. You're not going to intimidate me. You all have done everything to my family you can possibly do. Threatened to kill us. I grew up with security, all of that. I get it. But there are things worse than death. Being a coward is worse than death. You're going to get out of here anyway. And I hope that when I go, I'm with my Lord and with the rest of my friends who are up there too. So you can't frighten me. Because we're all going to get out of here. But I'm not going to be a coward while I'm here. And I'm not going to play footsie with you while I'm here. Not play it. Israeli and Palestinian lives matter equally, and they need to be saved. You've had twice as many Palestinians as have been killed as Israelis. All of it's wrong. Every Israeli life that has been lost, that has been taken, their lives were not lost. People were killed. They were killed on both sides. Israelis have killed Palestinians, and Palestinians have killed Israelis. It's all wrong, everybody. Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of George Floyd and Trayvon Martin? Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired? Aren't Black mothers tired of being afraid for their Black boys whenever they leave the house? Whenever your man leaves the house, you're afraid that he's not going to get back? That's in the United States. That's my story. I'm tired of that. The biggest open air prison in the world is Gaza. Nobody should live like that. It's a war crime to deny these people food and fuel and water. 96% of the water in Gaza is undrinkable. It's unhealthy. You can't have somebody live like that. It's wrong. And you ought to just call it wrong. And if it's wrong, any place in the world, you ought to say, we're going to fight it as Americans. Come on, y'all. No. No. Let's not play. Stop playing. Let's stop playing with people's lives. I don't want to do better. I want to do right. Okay? It's time for us to get it together. It's time for us to get right. And you ought to be calling for a ceasefire. Shame on the White House for calling a ceasefire. The idea of it is repugnant. The idea of it is disgraceful. Are you serious? Study 101. You call yourselves people of God? Are you serious right now? So many people I see on television today, they're not calling for justice. They're calling for revenge. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. God can work things out with you having to lift a finger. Get out of God's way. Let God work it out. Vengeance does not belong to you. It's not for you. I'm as human as the next person. Oh, yeah, when people come up and roll up on me, yeah, I want to get them back. But you know what I'm learning? I'm learning what my parents taught me years ago. Shut up and get out the way. The Lord's going to work it out. God will fight your battles if you let God do it. But you got to clean out your heart. My father says that to me all the time. Clean out your heart. You make sure you're right. So as my great grandmama used to say to me, that when the bad things happen to you, if they don't happen in you, you're going to be all right. When the hurt that happens to you does not happen inside of you, you're all right. But what we're watching over there and what we watch inside of our homes every day is the hurt that happens to us, it has happened in us, and then we start damaging other people. People who were ghettoized 60, 70, 80 years ago in Europe are now ghettoizing people in the Middle East today. Yeah, that's wrong. It's just wrong. It was wrong when it happened to you in Europe. It's wrong to do it now. It's wrong to do it in the United States. It's wrong to do it in Africa. It's wrong to do it anywhere. It's just wrong. Asia, anywhere you see it, whenever you see someone who is living on the downside of advantage in God's world, when God has enough for all of us to eat enough, to have great clothing, food, and shelter, there's more than enough for everybody. But you got some greedy people out here who want to sell weapons, who want to sell bombs, but they don't want you to have a school book. They don't want you to have a computer. Oh, we're going to pay for this. And all I'm saying is, I just hope that we begin to get on the right side of God. See, I don't want God to be on my side. I love we shall overcome. I love it. But it always struck me funny in that verse, God is on my side. God is on my side. No, I am on God's side. I am on God's side today. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday, but I got to get on God's side. I got to do it God's way. That's why when Dr. King was at that church and he found out that his home had been bombed, he didn't know whether his wife and his newborn baby had been killed. Yolanda was a toddler then. God rest her soul. May she rest in peace. Stress took her out of here young. He saw all these people gather in front of his home with guns. They were ready to take these terrorists on, because terrorists are here too. Byron Dell Beckwith, who killed Medgar Evers in front of his wife and children, he was a terrorist. Don't you act like terrorists only overseas. They're here. Dr. King said, put those guns away. Number one, we're outgunned. Number one, this is wrong. And we are outgunned. We ain't going to win this fight. But what I'm trying to help you to do is to have the strength to love. I'm trying to help you to evolve spiritually. I'm trying to exercise the demons of slavery out of you. I shared with you earlier in the broadcast, and it was something that my father's mother said to me, because she and Rosa Parks had a similar look. Whenever they looked in the mirror, they saw the abuse that their foremothers endured at the hands of white men. And Rosa Parks said, that made me fight even more. Why wouldn't she move to the back of the bus? She said, I thought about Emmett Till. Just a few months before, she said, I couldn't move. I couldn't move. I'm just asking us to grow up, everybody. D. Ray, yeah, I said that. Medgar Evers' son, his namesake, died. I don't know if he was 50. Ralph Abernathy's son, little Ralph, died. He might have been 50. Most of my friends and contemporaries, our parents who were on the front lines of the civil rights movement, their eldest children died early. I almost got out of here 20 years ago. It's a lot of stress. And we have had gallows humor, I must say. Yolanda and I, when we would see each other, and we saw each other only occasionally, well, we'd laugh about the security that would surround us, and, the death threats, and, and how you reacted to them, and on and on and on. It wasn't funny, but we were trying to make it through. Oh, my Lord. So when she died, I remember telling my father, I said, the bullet finally got her. He said, what do you mean? I said, she was shot April 4th, 1968, too. Said it just took 40 years for the bullet to kill her. I look at the health struggles of Rena Evers, who did what her father, she and her two siblings did what her father taught them to do, drop, tuck, and roll, because he was clear he was not going to live. But as an Army veteran, he said, these people are going to shoot me. I know this, but I got to, not going to say this to my kids, but what I want to teach you to do, if you hear that pop, 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 I want you all to drop, tuck, and roll. So Rena said, I dropped, I tucked, I rolled. She said, but we did something that our father told us not to do. I said, Rena, what was that? She said, well, we got up and ran to the door because our father told us drop, tuck, and roll and stay in that position until you don't hear any more shooting. And when she opened the door, she saw her father crawling up the stairs, bleeding to death. Aren't you tired? And that girl's had to live with that all of her life. Aren't you tired? Israeli and Palestinians are crying today. Somebody's lost the irreplaceable. We lost one of the top surgeons in the world who was an American citizen. He went over there. They killed his whole family. For what? Aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of taking one side over the other? Why don't you just do what my parents would have to do? And they knew all of their 5 children's tendencies. They would first tell us, shut up in the argument. Stop. First thing, ceasefire. Now you tell me your version, because all you can tell me is not your side, you got a version. Okay, then you tell me your version. Okay, now we're going to come up with something that is just. Santita, I know you have the tendency to do this. Jesse, Johnny, Yusuf, Jackie, you have the tendency to do this, that, and the other, all y'all. But what we're trying to do is move toward a solution that will not only make this just, but that will make you better people. Why don't we grow up, everybody? Grow up. Call the corporate media and demand that they tell you about Palestinian deaths. Demand that they go into Gaza. Demand that they talk to some Palestinian people who have lost their families. Demand that. Have them talk to this woman about this man stabbing her 6-year-old boy 26 times. Because something changed in a 71-year-old white man. Are you kidding me? Sick of it. And you ought to be sick of it. And more than that, you ought to do something about it. Talk about this story. This little child stabbed 26 times. How can you make this right? You can't make this right. May Bordeaux live forever. God bless you, everybody. I will see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Call the corporate media and ask them that they do the right thing and start telling us about everybody who's died. And at least bring on Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and all of these other congresspersons who are calling for a ceasefire. Bring them on and let them explain what's going on. I'm going to reach out to their offices today. Why are they calling for a ceasefire? Because all we're calling for right now is more death. That's all. Just want more folks to die. And you've got the people waiting. You've got all of the A-list reporters. They're over in Israel right now, waiting to find out how many Palestinians have been killed. That's all they're waiting to do. And we'll all be poorer for it. Israel will not be strengthened by this. They won't be. We've got to do right, not better. We've got to do right. I love you, everybody. So let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Everybody like and share the show today. Like and share the show. And I want to thank all of our guests today for all that they contributed to the show. It means so much. And it means so much to be with each of you every day. You all are blessings in my life. I hope that I bless your life. I love you. God bless you, everybody. Bye-bye.